Welcome to HQ Spotlight, folks. Another week of college football with picks against the spread involving AP top 25 teams and college football ranked teams as we transition from AP to CFP. Got Chip Patterson and Danny Cannell with me as always. Chip had a better week, 12-8. Danny 9-11, but Danny's still well ahead in the overall rankings. This will be a Big Ten focused segment here. We do have our big time on CBS with USC and Oregon. USC catching nearly double digits. It's 9.5 of the total, near 60. Chip, I'm going to give you first word here since you had the better week. You're also backing a first half play in this one.
Yeah, slow starting Trojans. Lincoln Riley has, on one hand, been able to complement his team's ability to hang in a game, to play their best football in the second half. But I think Lincoln Riley would also like to see some better starts, and I think that is particularly important here on the road in Autzen Stadium, where you know the noise even is going to be just absolutely tremendous. And so I think that for Oregon, which has also been a team that at times, over the last 2 years really, has not always had the best third quarters. I think I want to go ahead and get them right off the start, right off the rip. So as USC is coming into this game a little bit banged up in a couple crucial positions, Oregon has settled into its identity as a ground and pound team. I don't know if I like the 9.5, but I, capital L, love being able to get Oregon in the better half for the Ducks. The worst half for the Trojans, under 6 points. So I'll lay the Oregon first half minus 5.5.
Yeah, this one's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see this game. I think it's going to have a feel of a Big Ten game. Powerhouses going against each other. And Oregon, the number one rush defense in the Big Ten, is going to try to challenge USC and their physicality. I think they do have some success with it. I think they're going to be able to move the ball on USC's defense, even though they've been better and more improved. I still think you've got Dante Moore, Noah Whittington in the backfield. Kenny Sadiq back in the lineup was a big playmaker for them. We'll see how some of the other injuries play out for the Ducks. And for USC, I look at Lincoln Riley as one of the better offensive minds out there. I think they're going to be able to put up some points too. So I'm going to tackle the total and go over the 59.5 here. Jaden Maeva has been one of the better quarterbacks in the country. He's been solid. We had the debate today for cover 3. Where is he? Well, clearly he's not the number one overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winner, but he's not been a disappointment either. And I do think with the weapons that he has on the outside, he'll be able to take advantage of Oregon's defense at some point and put up some points. Maybe it's too little too late, but in the end, I think it's a higher scoring game, so I'll go over.
Yeah, this game features 2 of the top 3 yards per play teams this season in the FBS. And again, even though these two teams don't control their own path to the Big Ten championship, and both Indiana and Ohio State went out, it does have CFP at-large implications at Autzen this season. Speaking of Ohio State, number 1 team in the country, of course, has been dominant since their run to the championship last season. No different here this season. Hosting a Rutgers team at 31.5. Back to a noon game in Columbus, a total of 54 and a hook, and Ohio State is 10-0 all-time against Rutgers. Danny, you saw all those flattering numbers for Ohio State. I do worry last game with Smith and Tate and potentially maybe resting some of these guys that I really think Rutgers could potentially be a play at 31 or 30.5. What are you thinking here?
I do too, and I thought about it, and I was like, man, it's a huge number, but I also think you have to remember you've got a couple guys in the Heisman Trophy race. They're campaigning for both of them. So while you do want to get them in and get them out, that doesn't mean you can't get 50 points in the third quarter and get them out for the fourth quarter. I think Ohio State is going to have their way. Rutgers has been struggling. The other aspect is Rutgers, they've been throwing the ball a little bit more effectively. I don't know if they put up many points against Ohio State. I think you could see a game maybe 42-10, or excuse me, not 42-10, that wouldn't give you the over, 42-14, that type of game, somewhere in there. And even 49-14 would probably be the one that I would look for to get me over. So I'll go over that one. I think Ohio State will score plenty of points. I think Rutgers could score in the double digits. That's right, Tom. Or excuse me, that's right, Chip. I could get that to push me over the total. I'll go over.
What confidence in Ethan Callie-McManus? I mean, good gravy. Luke Altmaier. Luke Altmaier only got 16 points against the Silver Bullets, this Ohio State defense. Penn State, it had obviously the defensive turnovers that helped them out there. They only got to 14 points. So Illinois at 16, Penn State at 14, and check. Yeah, that's the only time we've gone over 10. So do I think that the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, Ethan Kaliakmanis, on senior day in Ohio Stadium, last home game of the regular season, and given their standing, probably the last home game that they're going to have this year, do I really think that this defense, that Matt Patricia is going to let these boys put up more than 10 points? Absolutely not. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of load management. I don't know what they're going to do offensively, whether we're going for the Heisman or trying to get healthy. But what I do know is Rutgers ain't going to score many points. Best bet here, Scarlet Knights team total under 10.5.
49-10.
Okay.
Both win.
49-10. You guys both get there. Interesting note on Ohio State. They've led the entire second half of every game this season. Third FBS team this decade to do that. They would join Georgia in 21 and Michigan in 23, which both won the Natty in their respective
I was going to say, what did those teams do, Tommy? I can't remember what those teams did.
They won it all, Chip.
Yeah, okay, all right.
They won the chip.
Yep.
Chip? Okay, all right, let's go to Michigan. Nearly 2 touchdown favorites at Maryland at 45.5. Now, you guys are on opposite ends of the spread. Danny, I'm going to give you first word only because I never know what to expect from road Michigan. And so you're taking road Michigan in the 13.5 to lay that at the Terps.
Yeah, because I feel pretty good about getting anywhere they play Maryland over the past 6 weeks, which has been lost in the loss column.
True.
Now I still need to win by 2 touchdowns, but I actually think this is a good bounce back spot for Michigan. They barely escaped out of Wrigley Field with that win with a little chip shot field goal at the end of the week last week. I think this is a big bounce back. There's been a lot of conversation around Mike Locksley and the Maryland Terrapins. It has been a disastrous season for them, especially coming off the rails lately. So I think this is a healthy dose of Michigan's run game, which you will run right through Maryland's defense. Bryce Underwood has been okay. He has not been the quarterback that I think even Michigan fans wanted, but I don't think it matters in this game. I think Michigan's defense is able to hold Maryland's offense in check, so I'll go ahead and lay them with the Wolverines.
Don't love Michigan's vibes in this spot. Maybe I would have liked it better at 14.5, but very difficult for a couple reasons. Number one, anytime that you are -5 in the turnover battle and still find a way to win, oh, buddy, water might be looking to find its level pretty soon. You mentioned Bryce Underwood hasn't been fantastic. We, of course, now know Justice Haynes, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. You had Marshall get a little bit banged up in that game as well. I just think that Michigan is not quite in its tippy-top form. They have not been playing the best football that we've seen from the Wolverines. And in a look-ahead spot to that game against Ohio State, I just wonder if they are not going to bring their best as they get off the plane and get into College Park. Now, I do need Maryland to play with the Pulse. I need Maryland to play some of its best football of the season. And that's where I'm wondering if we see something almost like Wisconsin, where the commitment to Luke Fickell led to a rejuvenated effort across the roster. Maryland has committed to Mike Locksley. They say they want to invest money in the roster moving forward. Malik Washington, the freshman on defense. These are the players that they're trying to keep around for 26. So I'll go with the Terps to make this thing a little bit hairy for the Wolverines.
Yeah, Turtles started 4-0, now 0-6 since then, Danny, that you mentioned there. So you guys are opposite ends again. Potential opportunity for Chip to get a game on DK in the overall record. You brought up Wisconsin, Chip. Shout out to them. Team total over 6.5 at Indiana, which cashed there with just the 7. That's all we needed. Illinois comes into town, 8.5-point favorites at Camp Randall. Final home game. Now, this game actually opened 9.5. Danny, you're on the hometown team catching the points. So the market moving with Danny Cannell.
Yeah, exactly. They're paying attention to the winners we're giving out here. I think that Wisconsin is actually, I think one of the things that was surprising was when their athletic director came out and backed Luke Fickell. I think everybody was like, what? Why would you do that? Well, since then, you've seen Luke Fickell give a lot of young players some opportunity, including some freshman linebackers who have been playing really hard. I think that's infused some life and energy as opposed to the cloud of what does the future hold. And I still think the team likes Luke Fickell. He can't help that their quarterback has been hurt, throughout this season, throughout the past 3 seasons. He can't help that they've played against the toughest schedule, but he can help the effort and attitude that's in that locker room. And I do think playing at home, this is a tough spot for Illinois to go into. And I like Illinois. We were a Luke Altmaier for most of the season, a Luke Altmaier podcast in the cover 3, but I do think this Wisconsin defense is good enough to keep them in the game, keep this win at a touchdown. So I'll take the home underdog.
Yeah, as Brett Bielema faces his former team, I think it's going to be a little bully ball. I think we're going to see some running the football from Illinois because while Luke Altmaier as an individual is extremely talented, outside of Hank Beatty, I don't know if we've really had the kind of alphas emerge to replace what they had last year with Zachariah Franklin and Pat Bryant Jr. The last time that Luke Altmaier has thrown for 250-plus yards in a game was October 4th against Purdue. It's just a different Illinois team. They're a very good team, but not one that I think is fit to just go into Camp Randall and blow the doors off. I see this being a little bit more of your classic Big Ten game. Super low total as you see it, but I'll even go under that. I'm going under the 40.5.
Under and the points to wrap things up in this first segment. Let's hit a break here on HQ Spotlight. When we come back, Oklahoma got that big win at Alabama. Now hosts Mizzou, who re-enter the rankings and are 7.5-point underdogs to the Sooners in Norman. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about Oklahoma. Last 6 games against ranked teams. Just a lot of it this year alone. Of course, catching 6.5 at Alabama. Not only did they cover, they won straight up. They moved up in the rankings. Now 8th in the country, hosting number 22 Missouri. 7.5 is the spread. 42.5 is the total at Memorial Stadium. And it is strength on strength in terms of rushing offense and defense. Total is what you guys have both targeted, opposite ends. Chip, I'm going to give you first word. Under or over for you?
Oh, this is going to be under for me. The Missouri Tigers have been a team that has been a little bit limited in terms of what they can do to teams offensively all season long. So while we've got some murmurs, some whispers that Bo Pribula might be trying to make his return to the lineup, I don't know if that activates the downfield passing game in a way that changes my opinion that Oklahoma is going to be able to stifle a lot of what Missouri tries to do. And at the same time, I don't know if we should just give them trophies for a win against a top 10 team with as few yards as Oklahoma had against Alabama. You know, when you get the return touchdowns, when you get the scoop and scores and things of that nature, man, it is really able to mask an offense that has not been very productive. So much like when we saw Missouri play against Vanderbilt earlier this season, a little 17-10 rock fight type game, I think we could see something similar here as Missouri takes on Oklahoma.
Look, I don't think this one's going to go sailing over, but I could see a 24-21 type of game just to go a little bit over. Much has been made about Oklahoma's defense, and they've been incredible. But we talked about it today. They have given up some big plays against the teams that run the football a little bit better. Michigan ran for 146. Now, granted, a lot of that was a Justice Haynes big touchdown run that he had in the game, but it was one big play. And I think Ahmad Hardy will be just pounding and pounding and pounding into that Oklahoma defense. It is going to be a heavyweight battle. And all I needed for him is pop 1 or 2 of those out of there. I don't think that's too crazy. And I do think if John Mateer in this Oklahoma offense, while they've been struggling somewhat, I still do think there is some big play potential in them. Playing at home, I expect Oklahoma's offense to play a little bit better as well. So I'm going to go over this total.
Let's go to Kyle Field, number 3 Texas A&M, holding steady after that miraculous comeback at halftime, down 30-3 against South Carolina. They get it done. Now 54.5 against Samford. You guys are both on the spread. Danny, I'll give you first word. Grabbing all the points, sweating to 54.5, we think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, it's going to be close to this number. I would expect a heavy blowout. But this is a team that just came back from an epic come-from-behind victory last week, which tells me they should be pretty dialed in from the start of the game. But they also have the game against Texas the following week. And you want to be healthy for that game. You want to get your starters in. You want to get them out. So I think this is a big load management game for Mike Elko and those Texas A&M Aggies. And Marcel Reed very much in the Heisman conversation. I think they want to get him his stats, but I think they're able to do that early. I think they hit cruise control in the second half.
Yeah, guys, I mean, they tell us what their goals are by the way that they handle business. Just to run through some of Texas A&M's November games against lesser competition recently, 38-3 against New Mexico State last year, 38-10 against Abilene Christian, 20-3 against UMass. We ain't trying to go put 60 on the board, fellas. We're just trying to keep everybody healthy. Come on, running clock. Let's run that clock for the third and fourth quarter so we can both get this Samford plus 54.5.
We'll have a few more games to talk about involving SEC teams with FCS or even really bad FBS teams, which we'll get to. ACC, though, is on deck, and then they're up now to bat with Miami laying 17.5 on the road against Virginia Tech. All the news with James Franklin this week, obviously not coaching in this game, though, at 48.5. Chip, I'm going to give you first word here, taking the home dogs and the points.
Buddy, if you don't think there's a James Franklin bump and buzz in Blacksburg, you are missing the point here, because I watched that press conference in Castle Coliseum, and it is amazing how thrilled, elated, and invigorated they are. They had Frank Beamer walking out there. They had Bud Foster walking out there. James Franklin said the night before he signed the contract, he called Frank Beamer and asked for his blessing like he was asking to get married to Virginia Tech. I mean, there is some real enthusiasm behind this program right now. They're going to turn it into a big recruiting weekend. Everybody on that Virginia Tech team is auditioning to be part of James Franklin's Hokies squad. I just think that in Lane Stadium, after the week that was of Virginia Tech getting its guy, this is a little bit too much for a Miami team that has only played 2 games away from home and are 1-1 in those 2 games. I maybe a little lower scoring helps us get there, but I'll take Virginia Tech to be able to stay within 17 and a hook.
When I was in the NFL and I was on a bad team and the coach might be on the hot seat and we probably all knew he was going to get fired, the head coach would stand in front of the team and he said, hey, you may not be playing for me, but you're playing for somebody out there. And he would basically want to try to get your best effort. Well, they have the opportunity, as you mentioned, Chip, this is their audition to either stay at Virginia Tech if they want to, or if they want to hit the transfer portal because there's going to be a new coaching staff, it's for them to get on tape and to put out some good film against another opponent. Here's the issue, though. I do think Miami's defense is pretty nasty, and I do think Miami's defense will make it a struggle for Virginia Tech. But I do think Miami's, how does their offense do on the road versus a high-effort, high-energy game where that defense is playing all out against you? I think they could struggle, so I'm going to go under on the points, but I like your play, too.
Okay, the Franklin aura bump in terms of the handicap for the Canes and the Hokies in this one. Let's get to Georgia. We gave a trend in a full screen, what we call a graphic, that was flattering to the Sooners. This one, not so much for Kirby Smart, is a 40-point favorite, 13-1 to the number here. And it's taking on a Charlotte team, and so the Dogs are going to be favored by 43.5. I mentioned Charlotte, not an FCS team, but certainly priced like one. Chip's got to play in the total, but Danny, you've been grabbing a lot of points in recent weeks, but you want to lay it with the Dogs? Is it
too late for me to switch? Like, do we have to ask James, our producer?
Why the change?
Because I just saw that graphic. Like, I don't need to see anything more.
Okay.
Like, and again, this kind of goes against my philosophy because I do think Georgia will want to get in and get out. They've got a big game against Georgia Tech. They've got their playoff hopes still in sight. They want to be healthy down the stretch. So I'm going to have a little consultation with James and Chip to see if he will allow this. But I would like to switch my pick to Charlotte and the 43.5. Give me the 49ers.
You had an easy out, Danny. You could have just joined me on the under. Like, what is the number that Georgia wants to hit? Georgia, like you said, wants to get in. They want to get out. They want to take care of business, and they want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. And to your point, Tommy, Charlotte and UMass are being priced to the level where you might be able to fill out 25 FCS teams that are going to get better ratings than what we're going to get from the 49ers. I might have thought that they fought hard against the North Carolina Tar Heels in a 20-3 result back in September, but time has shown both those teams very much revealing who they are. Yeah, I'm just going to say Charlotte doesn't score a lot. Georgia tries to get it over with quickly, so I'm going to go under the total.
All right, TBD on DK's pick. We'll see.
James gave me the check, so we can switch it on the record.
All right.
So I'm taking Charlotte plus 43.5. Let's go. I'm starting 43.5 to nothing with 43 to nothing.
It's like gaining strokes playing out around. Okay, let's hit a break here on the show. Halfway through, 2 segments done, 2 to go. Notre Dame continue to be in a great spot when it comes to the CFP. Next test for the Fighting Irish, favored by 5 touchdowns over Syracuse at home. Let's get to Notre Dame, which 3 weeks worth of college football playoff rankings has shown us the committee loves the Fighting Irish. Last 7 home games as a 20-point favorite. It's been pretty good with one exception against Boise and that 21.5-point spread. It's 35.5 with Syracuse in South Bend this weekend. Again, Notre Dame's been winning. They've been winning with margin. They have been comfortably doing it. Pitt was the latest result of what Notre Dame had to get done here. Chip, you do have was it a first half team total play? It's an interesting sort of angle here when it comes to this game.
Tommy, what do you do, right? Well, what do you even do with this? I was going through and I was reviewing Notre Dame Pitt to try to look for my angle here, to which I saw that Notre Dame did let its foot off the gas a little bit. The dominance that we showed from the Fighting Irish in the first quarter into the second quarter, almost really up until halftime, was very much a make them quit, put them away. But Pitt is a proud team. Pat Narduzzi, no matter what he said in front of the media, did want to make sure that they had a respectable score on the scoreboard by the end of that thing. But the Fighting Irish had done the work that was necessary. And so, when I am considering Notre Dame in this spot against Syracuse, home finale, I think that they will take a similar approach. So when I was looking for the best way to bet this, I didn't like my number on the first half spread, but I did love the first half team total option of 23.5. So we just need Notre Dame to get to 24 by the time they get into the locker room, and that is the kind of score that can really put Syracuse in a bind and be able to make things easier for the second half.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking. I hope you hit yours, because I think that'll help me get towards mine. I'm going over the 50.5 in the game itself. Jeremiah Love, statistically, he's up around the top portion of the country. You mentioned Heisman races. I think they'd love to get him some touches and a lot of touchdowns in this game. I think Notre Dame scores at will. I think this one gets sideways. I think they could come close to getting this themselves. You know, it's interesting because they've been a very, and I think they're overrated. A lot of people have looked at Notre Dame and picked apart their resume, and I think that's just feeding their fire. I think they want to go out and destroy every opponent that is out there, including Syracuse this weekend. Syracuse likes to go fast. They like to throw it around. I think they could put up some points when it doesn't matter, so I'll take the over.
Yeah, Orange just haven't been the same since Angeli went down. Clemson game, it's just certainly been tough and for every reason. By the way, Jeremiah Love averaging 150 scrimmage yards during this 8-game win streak as he tries to give himself a few Heisman moments, like he had that spin run against Pitt there to try to get into the Heisman conversation. So that's it for this game. Let's move to Eastern Illinois at Alabama. This one at Bryant-Denny. Crimson Tide obviously coming off that close loss to Oklahoma here. Both of you guys like Bama, kind of predicting the scores. Danny, 49-7 is kind of where you're laying at.
Yeah, I think it's a comfortable victory. I mean, if this was one in the 50s like some of the other ones, I'd probably take Eastern Illinois. Curious to see how Bama comes out. You know, are they still kind of, licking their wounds a little bit from the loss against Oklahoma? Maybe there's a slower startish game for them. They do have Auburn coming up. It's going to be a physical game. So I think this is one about managing the game script. They don't want to show a whole lot. They just want to make it a very business-like win. So that's what I would expect from Kalen DeBoer's squad.
Yeah, Chris Wilkerson's Eastern Illinois squad is 3-8 on the season. I don't know if that's going to be the FCS team that comes in throwing punches. We're not even talking about one of your Furman Citadel situations where they're just so crazy from a schematic standpoint that they can depress the scoring to make this a little scary. I've got Alabama 42-3. I don't think that the Panthers are going to be able to score a touchdown here.
Texas is north of a touchdown against Arkansas. It's 8.5 on the total, 57.5. Again, Texas losing to Georgia. They still have A&M on the horizon. So there's conversations about them being a 3-loss team if they can beat Texas A&M. Again, if. It's a big if. But Chip, I'm going to give you first word. You're grabbing the points with the Razorbacks. Also, this defense, which had been elite last 3 games, they haven't been elite. They give up a lot of points the last handful of games.
Yeah, I have been taking notice of a Texas defense that has not been delivering results that match the talent. Certainly Steve Sarkisian has as well, which is certainly the only reason why he was so salty on the SEC coaches teleconference this week, right? It's not like anybody's spreading rumors about Steve Sarkisian right now, right? It's not like there's any noise around this Texas Longhorns football program, right? Yuck. I don't want any part of that. Bad vibes in Austin. Arkansas playing with some real fight. Now, I am a little worried that the way that they lost to LSU might be a little bit of a back-breaking type impact. But if Bobby Petrino can really rally this team together and lead them to a victory in Austin, And if he has any sights of trying to win this job full time, this would be a great opportunity. I just don't think that while Arkansas's defense and Texas's offense is weakness on weakness, and even though what you say about Texas's defense I agree with, strength on strength, Arkansas offense, Texas defense, I just think this is a few too many points for a game that could get a little hairy. So give me Woo Pig Sooie plus the 8.5.
I totally agree. I think this is a dangerous spot for Texas. You mentioned the vibes. There's also a huge game against Texas A&M next weekend, a rivalry game that this team has had circled, all season long. They're coming off the loss to Georgia. Where are they mentally? And as you pointed out, Arkansas is still playing pretty hard, and their offense is capable of putting up a ton of points. I think Texas, this is a get-right game for their offense, though, as well. So I'll go over the total, over the 57.5, because I do think Arkansas scores a bunch. But I also think Arkansas is a very live underdog here to potentially pull off the upset. If Texas is distracted, if there is dysfunction, if they are not focused on this opponent, they will lose this game.
Let's get to Kentucky and Vandy in a 9.5-point spread with a total at 53.5. You guys are both on the same side when it comes to the total. Danny, over in this game.
Yeah, I think this is one where Kentucky's offense is kind of, being reinvigorated since the change at quarterback, going to Boley, and he's been really solid for them. We all know about Diego Pavia and what he brings to the table. And, the game against Auburn in overtime, he has 500 total yards. He has his best game yet. So I do think that probably worries me more, that Vanderbilt will hold up their end of the bargain offensively against a Mark Stoops coach team, that their defense is always pretty nasty. But ultimately, being in Nashville, I think they'll figure out ways to put up some points, and I think Kentucky will too. So I think it's going to be a higher scoring game. I'll go over the 53.5.
I'm right there with you, DK. Ty Simpson goes for 340 against this Vanderbilt pass defense. Arch Manning goes for 328. Ashton Daniels for 353. Teams are just starting to find and exploit weaknesses against the Vanderbilt pass defense, and I think that Cutter Boley is going to be able to do that as well. Like you mentioned, there is some DNA of, well, what if Vanderbilt is going super slow and methodical? What if Mark Stoops does want to drag this down into a Mark Stoops special? I'm going to go away from sort of the assumptions and the broad strokes for both of these coaches and instead focus in on the recent results. Recent results say that Cutter Boley and Kentucky's offense can score, and that Vanderbilt should be able to do the same.
So let's get to a G5 school that last week was James Madison. It's not the Dukes this year. Yeah. It is actually Tulane. Again, different conversation for a different show, but a chance for the Wave at 7.5 at Temple with a total of 56 and a hook. Danny, you want to lay the points, and for them, laying in and trying to win with margins the best they can do, especially for them and for the Americans.
Yeah, I think this is the best. I mean, we've had, the first week it was Memphis, they lose. Last week it was USF, they lose. The team that shows up in the bracket on the reveal show. Now it's Tulane. I think the jinx is broken. I think Tulane is a pretty good football team that has a pretty good resume, that does have the talent and the skill set to go on the road and win in Philadelphia against Temple. So I'll lay the points.
Boys, this Tulane defense has been carved up last 3 times out. And I think that's what has John Summerall talking like he's talking, right? A former linebacker from the defensive side coming up through the ranks. John Summerall's telling his team he doesn't feel like they're one of the 25 best teams in the country. He's telling reporters, I think we're average. And I don't think that's playing the old, mind games of a coach. I think he really believes that watching this Tulane team continue to get carved up is something that really brings him some concern and does not enthuse him. So, yes, I do think that KC Keeler's Temple squad, Evan Simon and the rest of that group, I think that they are going to be able to go out there and move the football. I think they're going to be able to score. So I'm going to say it will get a little dicey for Tulane, but Jake Retzlaff and squad are going to be able to score. Temple are going to be able to score, and this thing goes over the total.
All right, Tulane and the over ends our conversation here. We'll hit one last break on the show. Georgia Tech had a tough time beating a really awful Boston College team last week on the road. Much tougher test with a short number hosting Pitt Saturday. Home stretch here on the show. Let's start with Utah hosting Kansas State. Utah's a double-digit favorite this season. They have covered in every single game. They've got those losses, but they have an argument to be made about being an at-large CFP, but the number 17.5 against Kansas State at Rice-Eccles. This is a Saturday afternoon game, at least for Eastern. Utah averaging 51 points per game and 356 yards rushing over its last 3. Chip, 17.5 seems just right for you to lay that number against K-State. You think they're going to win pretty big here?
Yeah, if I'm on the opposite side of a hook, you know that I must like this thing all the way up to 20 or 21, and I do. Kansas State had trouble with Oklahoma State last week, boys, and I don't know if this is the kind of season or if this is the kind of team where I'm going to be able to overlook that, because while the Kansas State Wildcats have risen up and thrown some haymakers against better squads after a very disappointing start to the Big 12 campaign, yikes. I just don't know if Chris Kleiman's going to be able to land the plane here. Utah playing for a lot more. I trust them. Their two-headed quarterback monster that they've got with Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin. Give me the Utes. I'll lay the points.
Yeah, I think Utah's offense puts up plenty of points. Bird Ficklin, they've been brinkling him in, but putting little packages for him. He had 6 for 166 their last time out. But I do think Kansas State's offense is good enough to put up, do I need 2 touchdowns out of them? I think that's probably what I need to feel pretty good about the over. It's already pretty low at 52.5, and I know Utah's going to put up big numbers, so I'll go over.
All right, jump down a number. I might jump in with you, DK, because I took Kansas State, Oklahoma State over last week, and it was not great, but it's a chance to bounce back there.
There we go.
And see if they can get the number.
I'm telling you, Tommy, that is concerning. That Oklahoma State team is dead.
I know.
Why could Kansas State not muster more than 14 points? Yeah, it ain't great.
At least we didn't have to sweat it, because it single digits for a long time in that game. Short spread, TCU catching 1.5 against number 23 Houston with a total in the low to mid 50s. Opposite ends of the spectrum for your guys. So chance to pick up a game. DK, which side are you on?
So TCU looked awful last week. I thought they potentially could upset BYU, and they got completely manhandled. Josh Hoover had his worst game of the season, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But I think this is a big bounce-back game for TCU, who is still pretty competitive. Sonny Dykes' squad is still putting up pretty good fight. They just went into a juggernaut. And Houston, I don't think it's the same defense that he saw last week, caliber-wise, and I don't think it's the same atmosphere that he saw last week. So I like TCU to potentially win this game outright. Willie Fritz has been awesome. Great story of the season this far for Houston, but I think this is where they get knocked off.
TCU has not looked like itself in a month. I mean, trace it back to the 42-36 win against Baylor. They barely squeak by West Virginia. They lose a game against Iowa State where, as I mentioned, they were just blowing their toes off one by one, self-inflicted wounds all across the board. And then last week, after we watched the betting market continue to move in TCU's favor all through the week, the number I gave out here on HQ Spotlight, like a whole field goal off from the closing number, and yet the number I gave here on HQ Spotlight wins walking away. I just think the Horned Frogs are lost in the wilderness. I ain't going to trust them to bounce back. Give me Willie Fritz and the Cougs to be able to win this one.
Another short number. We've got Pitt catching 2.5 here against Georgia Tech with a total of 61.5. So again, Georgia Tech was down 11 in the fourth quarter to Boston College, and yes, they were able to win, but boy, they're starting to. I know the Georgia game's looming soon, but they haven't been at least metrically pleasing here. Chip, give me the lowdown on grabbing the points. Is it fading the Yellow Jackets here? Did you see something from Pitt against that Notre Dame team last week?
Yeah, I don't think Pitt's defense got blown away by Notre Dame. I mean, certainly you mentioned the Jeremiah Love. In our time earlier, you mentioned Jeremiah Love spin move, explosive run, but it wasn't a getting totally outclassed performance for Pitt's defense. And I do think that Pitt's strength and athleticism at linebacker can help them a little bit against Haynes King. And there is, of course, an obvious opportunity there for Pitt's offense, where the difference from playing against Notre Dame's defense to Georgia Tech's defense is a gulf. And so I do think that we can see Mason Heinschel, if he can flush that performance, something that can be tough for young quarterbacks, if he can do that, he should be able to have a lot more success here against the Georgia Tech defense that's given it up. But it is a little bit of a fade of Georgia Tech. It's a fade of a team that played with fire last week and really has been playing with fire multiple times this season. But finally, from the vibes department, it is a little bit of the Murphy's Law of this. I mean, anything that can go wrong for the ACC will go wrong. And Georgia Tech losing this game at home to Pitt after Pitt gets beat by Notre Dame, I mean, that would just be more crabs in a bucket just pulling each other down. So, yeah, a little hunchy, I will admit, but I'll take Pat Narduzzi and the Panthers to pull it off.
Yeah, so we talked about this one. I don't have a good vibe for this game, but I'm going to go off what you think is going to happen, which usually it's not that easy. But I'm going to go over the total. I do like Chip's play, too, with Pitt because that's the ACC, and it would be them to just, like, stub their foot in the home stretch. One of the teams with the best ranking would go down. But if Georgia Tech couldn't slow down NC State's offense, if they couldn't slow down Boston College offense, I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Pitt's offense either. The one thing that does make me wise, I think I might have to sweat this out, is that Georgia Tech's offense might have trouble scoring against Pitt. That's the one dynamic that I look at that maybe I don't have as much confidence in, but I'll say at some point Haynes King and company figures it out. Buster Faulkner's one of the better offensive coordinators in the country. I think they'll figure it out, so I'll go over the 61.5.
So we get the third Saturday in September in November for the first time since 1955. Tennessee and Florida with the line that's around 3.5. There's some 4s out there in the market. You know, Danny, I was just talking to Jacqueline D'Agostino, who's the most diehard Florida fan we have on our roster, and I said, hey, Tennessee or Florida? 3.5. She said, Tennessee, lay it.
All right, well, if Jacqueline said it, then I'm going to take it. The Gators are a hard team to figure out because, you know, they gave the best effort versus Georgia. After Billy Napier's fired, they come up short. Then they lay an complete egg against Kentucky, and they're like, the team is thrown in the towel. Then last week, they're, you know, in a game where they looks like they could win at Oxford against Ole Miss. I think they're kind of just a team that's hard to gather what effort you're going to get. But I do think Tennessee is the better football team, and I do think, we talked a little bit about this in the Cover 3 pod too, that Josh Heupel needs a win. And I think he needs a big, because their resume is not great. And this is not a resume builder, but it is definitely a game that Tennessee cannot afford to lose. So I'll go with the Vols. I'll say they come out with better effort. I think they're the better football team. I'll lay the points on the road.
Statistically, Tennessee's got a great offense. But I don't know if I agree with the numbers. They might be computer trickers. I need to look in to see if they are tricking the computers on this one, because I think Tennessee's offense sometimes struggles to really get into a rhythm, to really string together successful plays, to string together successful drives, to impose your will the way that this offense is really built to do it. And I think about Florida, and as you mentioned, Danny, the way that they have competed, just I don't see playing at night at the Swamp. I just don't see this group being ready to roll over. Now, that said, everybody who's worth anything, in my opinion, from a handicapping perspective, offensively for the Florida Gators, they're all on the injury report. So if Florida is going to win this, it's got to be a game that they keep a little bit lower scoring. And so for that reason, I do think that it could be a little bit tight for Josh Heupel in a tricky situation. Tennessee, Florida, I see it being a little lower scoring than this number suggests. I'll go under.
Let's get back to the Big 12, where entering this week, there are 6 teams that still actually have a chance to make it to the conference title game. That includes BYU and Cincinnati. Cougars laying the 2.5 on the road against the Bearcats here with a total of 54 in the hook. You guys are both on the same side. Chip Patterson, that is grabbing the 2.5 with the home dog.
Yeah, Hunchy, too. I'm going to say that this is going to be a backs against the wall, circle the wagons, gut check Saturday. Because if Cincinnati is going to make anything of a season where they showed so much promise through much of the year, coming through a 2-game skid where the defense has really struggled, the offense has been a little bit banged up at the running back position, but more than anything, we've seen Brendan Sorsby really have some subpar performances. He started the year really doing a good job of taking care of the football, and the interceptions have started to pile up. You cannot do this against that opportunistic BYU defense. Final home game of the season. Hopefully, for Scott Satterfield's sake, they've got the Nippert packed out and really making some noise. BYU has been the better football team recently, certainly, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati in a very Big 12-style upset.
Yeah, so that's the same play I'm going with. I'm also going with, well, why isn't Cincinnati a bigger underdog? Like, why isn't BYU as a top 12 team? Why aren't they favored by closer to a touchdown? I think it's because the margins are so slim. And you mentioned it, Brendan Sorsby has to have a bounce-back game. He's coming back home. He was home last week. Arizona's defense, though, and we talked about this last week, it still is one of the best defenses in the country. I think this is where Sorsby does it more with his legs. I think this game could be uglier, but I'm going to snatch up Cincinnati in those 2.5 points, and I do think there is a chance they could win the game outright.
All right, one more game left to go. We've got Arizona State laying nearly a touchdown in Boulder against Colorado with a total of 48.5. It's interesting because Sun Devils not ranked in the AP, but the committee likes them. Murmurs this week of Kenny Dillingham, Sam Levitt being shopped around. Of course, that's down the road, Danny, but in terms of this game, both you and Chip have targeted some points, not necessarily the spread here. Tell us why.
I mean, Kenny Dillingham said that his backup, Jeff Sims, is an NFL quarterback someday. I mean, he almost is now. It's 6 years in. I mean, he's probably 25 years old. But that offense is not quite as dynamic. So to expect them to go on the road at Boulder and just light it up, I'm not going to go there. And then I know there was some life infused into the Colorado offense with Julian Lewis, the young quarterback, thrust in the starting quarterback role at West Virginia. West Virginia is one of the bottom dwellers in the Big 12. So I think Arizona State's defense shows up. I think it's a lower scoring affair, so I'll go under the 48.5.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and support Arizona State's defensive efforts there. They had the absolute clamps on West Virginia, had a couple of sort of frustrating and a little bit concerning third down breakdowns along the way. But for the most part, this is a group that should absolutely be able to dominate. So it's a super low total that I realize, but my best bet here, very similar to the way that you're seeing it. I'm just not going to touch the volatility of the Sun Devils offense against Colorado's defense. My best bet is Colorado team total under 20.5.
All right, that is it. Best of luck to all of our players out there. Thank you, Chip and Danny, for that. I'm Tommy Tran. We'll see if Chip can make up a little more ground on DK this time next week. Check out the rest of the Cover 3 crew, Bud Elliott and Tom Fornelli. Locks on Thursday, Instant Reaction Saturdays. Who knows? Maybe DK will pop on again and be a special guest on that Saturday night show. You'll have to tune in to find out.